All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Another episode of Limitless Healing. We're on episode 4 today. So, as you may have seen over the past couple weeks, we've been going over the adrenal glands, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we were going to go into a little bit more in-depth detail with phase 2 and 3 today. And I'm going to wrap that up in something that has been coming up quite frequently, and that's a gut infection. Okay, so before we get started today, as usual, I was thinking about this on my drive in this morning. I want you guys to do a shout out from what city you're watching from. Okay? Do that. And what's your favorite smelling candle? It's a random question, right? So write that in the comment box and we'll get started here today. So, why did I want to switch topics up? Well, it's been something that's been on my heart for the past couple weeks, and it's a personal thing for myself, and I want to kind of extend that out to you here too. So, when we're talking about the phase 1 of your adrenal glands, we're talking about a high spike in cortisol. We're stressed out. Phase 2 is where the cortisol starts to kind of taper down a little bit, and phase 3 is when it more or less shuts down. And so I have a depiction of what that's going to look like here, and that is this guy right here. All right, so if you're looking up in this corner right here, can't see my finger past the box, but you're going to see your different phases. Let's do this. So you're going to see your different phases over there. And that's going to be what we're looking at in terms of your adrenal glands. So initially, you're coming over, then all of a sudden, boom, you spike up, and then you start to crash back down again. So there's your phase 1, your phase 2, and your phase 3. And you can see that down towards the bottom where you see the normal 1, 2, and 3. All right? So when we're talking about those phases, I want you to kind of remember and visualize that picture. It's just like a giant little bell curve graph. It's pretty easy to memorize, at least for me it was, because I love this stuff. So what does that have to do with today? So I'm going to try to go as slow as possible. I haven't gone as nerdy as I probably am today. I've got a ton of research on this one particular topic. And so when we're talking about having infections, I kind of preluded all of the different conditions, symptoms, etc. that are associated with this. I mean, things from anything as aggressive as, like your rheumatoid arthritis. It can cause cancer, it can cause stomach cancer, it can cause multomas. It can cause poor absorption of nutrients, food sensitivities, food allergies, seasonal allergies, indigestion, heartburn, ulcers. Holy smokes, this thing can cause a lot of things to happen in the body. And so again, in the comment box, I want you guys to write, what infection do you think that I'm talking about? Okay? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes. I'm going to take a little sip of my water here. You go ahead and put in the comment box what you think is going to be. Much better. So, today we're going to be talking about H. pylori, or Helicobacter pylori. So this is a nasty little bugger of an infection. Not just because of what it does, but because of how contagious it actually is. Okay, so I'm going to rewind that. Not just because it's dangerous because of what it does, but how contagious it actually is. So in the past, we think about H. pylori. There's different ways we could pick up this bacteria: utensils, saliva, fecal, oral. But usually we think about, your third world countries where they can't wash their hands very well. And heaven forbid we get something somewhere else. We pick it up, and as soon as it's in a family, tends to spread like wildfire. At least if the family is at least a little bit affectionate and giving each other kisses and things, because that is one of the ways you're going to be able to transmit this thing back and forth between family member to family member. So when we have certain symptoms that are going on, it could be something as simple as just a little bit of indigestion, just a little bit of acid reflux. And what happens is when we're in that state, we're trained to take something for it. It's true. If we have heartburn, what are we trained to take? Prilosec, I think, which is actually off the market, or should be off the market now because it was causing cancer. It's causing all kinds of other issues. You can have proton pump inhibitors. You can have all of these extra things that doctor's going to toss you on, but it's not going to get to that underlying cause of the problem. Ginger, yes, okay? So we'll talk about this. So when you initially have indigestion, we'll kind of go through the physiology of this. When you initially have acid reflux, you usually have too much acid. It's true, okay? But eventually, what's going to happen is we're trained to take Tums or any of those things. We keep suppressing our stomach acid over and over and over and over and over again. And then what happens is we have a state of low stomach acid, or we call that hypochloremic hypochlorhydria. So hypochlorhydria. So it's too little of stomach acid. Okay? We need stomach acid. It's one of the most vital things for us to have in our bodies. And if we don't have it, it's one of our mainline defenses against what we put in our mouth and what gets down into our digestive tract. So we needed to break down food. We need to break down the proteins. We need to sterilize the food. It's really important because if we're not breaking down our foods, what we're going to do is eat something. It's going to go down, drop into the stomach. Stomach's going to try to do the best it can to break it down, but more often than not, it's going to shove it back up the esophagus because it can't break down the food. So you're going to have heartburn. You're going to have acid reflux. You're going to have some of that acid juice coming up, like gastric juice coming up and burning away the esophagus. So again, we're like, oh my gosh, I have too much stomach acid. So what do? Throw more antacids on it. Throw more Tums on it. Throw more Pepto-Bismol on it. Throw something to suppress the stomach acid. Well, it already is low, guys. So we don't want to fall into that trap. Again, if you've ever worked with me in the past, you know that I'm not about treating symptoms. I'm all about treating the cause. So when we look at this case, if you will, we have conditions where H. pylori can come about. So say we have low stomach acid, or we come across somebody with H. pylori, comes into us, drops into the stomach. H. pylori by nature will suppress stomach acid, boom, outright. So when you have H. pylori, it's basically like putting a fire extinguisher out to your stomach acid. You're going to have a very difficult time breaking down food. And you're going to have a ton of acid reflux because that thing is a nasty little bugger in there. If it stays there and if it gets stronger, you can have what are called virulence factors, which can be associated with different forms of diseases. For example, stomach cancer, so gastric cancer basically. You can have GERD. Again, you can have rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory conditions that are caused from having low stomach acid. All right. Now, how does this kind of tie into, what we've been talking about for the past couple weeks? Well, another well-known fact: if you are stressed out, which I'm sure nobody right now is stressed out. I'll wait. Okay. If you're stressed out, that chronic stress response is going to crush your stomach acid concentration. So it's going to bring it down even lower. So you already have low stomach acid concentration, and you throw H. pylori in there, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? Somebody told me I should do apple cider vinegar, or I should do betaine to try to bring up my stomach acid, and you do it, you're like, that hurts like a son of a gun. Well, why do you think that is? If you have H. pylori in there, you're throwing more acid into H. pylori. H. pylori causes ulcerations through the stomach. You're throwing acid on open wounds, basically. It's not a good day for you. So this is where testing comes into play. You really need to make sure that, Ginger, if you did have it, we can talk about that later, but you need to make sure that you get that thing gone. And then if there are other family members in your household that are even close to exhibiting symptoms, but in my opinion, I would test them or work on treating with them. If you have any of those, you need to squash it. We need to make sure we're doing really good with our sanitary practices. We need to make sure, unfortunately, we're not trying to swap saliva unless we have like a super clean mouth. We have to do all these things to be proactive, so that way we're not killing it in our own body, passing it to somebody else. They pass it back to us, and we pass it over there. It just turns into the sloppy game of I hope I still don't have it. Again, where testing comes into play, where you can test and then retest that. So what else can H. pylori do in the body? So I'm going to open this up here. I'm going to kind of block myself out as I'm reading this, I guess, because I don't have it small enough on the screen. Maybe I can go over here. There we go. Maybe you guys can hear me or not. So what we're talking about is some more research. So basically what you're seeing here is H. pylori and what it does. So it causes, or can be caused from physiological or psychological stress in the body. So they stressed out mice, and we basically saw, they basically saw that they stressed out mice, and they saw that they had a greater risk for H. pylori infections and more aggressive H. pylori infections. So say that we have a case here, okay? Let me close that down. Oops. Boom. All right. So say we have a case here where we do have H. pylori. One of the top things we're going to want to do is, wait for it, eliminate stress. I'll wait. So we're going to want to eliminate stress, because stress is going to keep that stomach acid down. It's going to keep that H. pylori loving life. So we got to cut out caffeine. We got to cut out stress. We got to work on the body. And so again, how does it play into this? Well, I have found through the tests that we run, a lot of patients with H. pylori infections have adrenal burnout. Okay? Why do you think that is? I'll wait again. Get another sip of my dirty water. Okay? So why do you think that is? Well, I'll tell you. If you have gut infections, whether it's in the large intestine, small intestine, stomach, if you have an infection somewhere throughout, you're going to be causing stress to the body. Stress is going to cause cortisol to raise. More pressure on the adrenal glands, right? So I found that usually when H. pylori sets in, you have to at least be in a phase 2 or a phase 3, okay? A phase 2 or phase 3, so going back to the chart here. So you have to basically be dropping down off of your cortisol spike. So coming up, boom, DHEA drops out the bottom, and then you're on your way down. And H. pylori can kind of set roots, okay? So they can go back and forth. So what do you need to do? Do you need to work on increasing and working with the adrenal glands, or do you need to go after H. pylori and remove the thorn in your side? Okay, that's why doing 2 tests at the same time are phenomenal. So that way you can see, do you have an active infection? And if so, what is that infection doing to your adrenal glands? Because when you remove the infection, your adrenals are going to start to come back to life. You just have to start paying attention to them and give them the nutrients that they need. All right, that's why all of this testing that we do is vitally important with this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go into our next spot here. I'm going to drop down a little lower so that way I can look up like I have a thought bubble up there. So H. pylori, what else is it going to do? So this is what I kind of preluded in my little ad that I did, or my little picture that I had for this talk for today. So it's going to cause nutritional deficiencies. So this is taken, if you just go right, this is PubMed. You type this in on Google, boom, the research actually comes out because CDC doesn't care about censoring H. pylori. So it's going to cause deficiency in your vitamin C, your vitamin A, vitamin B12, folic acid, other essential minerals. So it can cause pernicious anemia. There's a whole host of different things that this can cause in your body. And again, when we're talking about adrenal glands, the adrenal glands are one of the highest requirement, or use some of the highest levels of vitamin C in our body. So if we're not able to absorb vitamin C, or we're not even able to, and I can't even speak today, can't so clear. If we don't have enough vitamin C, then our adrenal glands aren't going to have the nutrients that they need, so adrenal glands are going to burn out, right? And then vitamin C, if we don't have it, it also decreases our iron absorption ability, which is going to lead us to anemia, which is going to lead us to fatigue, weight loss. Okay, there's all kinds of things that this is going to lead us to that we clearly don't want to have happen in our body. And so that's one of the things that we'll find with some H. pylori patients, is that they can fast all day long. And not because it's like a spiritual thing, but because they're not hungry. Why do you think if somebody has an H. pylori infection that they wouldn't be hungry? I'll wait again and have some of my dirty water. This isn't an ad for dirty water. It's just my water looks dirty because I have some BCAAs in it. I got distracted there for a minute. Nobody's answering. Okay. I'll just move on then. So when we're having this happen, when we're having an H. pylori infection happen, we need to basically test it. We need to make sure that we have it. We need to make sure that we nourish and listen to our bodies. Because again, if we're having H. pylori and we're not hungry, the main reason that I have found in that is because we don't have enough stomach acid. If we don't have enough stomach acid, there's something that's massively important that medical doctors will not talk about. It is our innate intelligence inside of our bodies that is smarter than our conscious mind is, smarter than any medical doctor mind that is out there, and I can promise you that, and I'll hang my hat that's not on my head on it, because our bodies know that if you consume food and you do not have stomach acid, your body will not be able to break down and assimilate that food. Okay? It will not be able to break down and assimilate that food. So put the food together. So say we have protein, okay? say we're bodybuilders, we're like, oh, I'm slamming protein down. Yeah, bro. Like I used to be. Okay, I was one of those guys. So, so we have protein. We're trying to get as much food in as possible. We're trying to bulk for off season. We're trying to get some lean muscle mass on. We keep eating, and our body's like, you know what? I'm not really gaining anything. In fact, this is becoming quite the challenge for me to even able to get food in. What's happening? Your stomach is in bad shape. You're putting too much food in it. It can't break down the food. And if you can't break down the food, then what do you think is going to happen? It's either going to want to push it out or push it immediately out. So when we have H. pylori, common symptom is going to be loose stool, diarrhea. Sometimes you can have black tarry stool. Okay, it's just pushing things out because your body knows, hey, I didn't break anything down, so you're not really going to be able to do this. Just blast it out. Okay. Gene said, please pass the apple cider vinegar. I would not do apple cider vinegar on somebody with H. pylori. So again, so if we have H. pylori, why wouldn't we want to eat, or why would fasting come very easy to us? It's because we're taking pressure, we're taking stress off of your stomach. So we're not overloading it, we're not crushing it, we're not trying to overdo. We're just letting our bodies kind of be. But in the state that happens, yeah, it's listening to our bodies, but our bodies are going to start to become catabolic. All right, we're going to break down because we need amino acids. We need energy to come from somewhere. And if you don't have a lot of fat on you, it's going to start pulling it from your muscle tissue. And if you're stressed, it will pull it from your muscle tissue. It'll pull it from your intestinal lining. It'll take your glutamine out. So a lot of things can happen, and there's a huge response between your gut and your HPA axis. So we'll just say HPA axis because I can't talk that fast this morning. Okay. So here we go here, boom. So I'm going to read this off here. Again, you're kind of seeing my head here, but what you're seeing right there is going to be basically the combination of what they're saying is that there is a huge correlation between having a healthy gut to having healthy gut will decrease your overactive HPA axis response. So to help to kind of take you out of that fight or flight response. But if you have infections in your gut, then it's going to cause your HPA axis to respond to that stressor. So again, there's research everywhere that's out there. All you have to do is Google this for 2 seconds. You can ask me for it, but quite honestly, I want you to do your research on this stuff. Why? Because there's too much hate, there's too much misinformation that's out there right now, and if I can distract you from going into hate speech on Facebook by researching some really cool stuff, I'm going to send you that way all day long. I have the research, but it's so easy to get. Okay? So you guys research this stuff. Okay? What else we got here? What does this look like? So we keep talking about H. pylori, H. pylori, H. pylori. What does it even look like? Okay, so this is a stool test that we like to run in our office. This is, I'm going to black myself out here for a second. Good. Sliding over. All right, you can still kind of see me here. So for looking, I wish you can see my finger on the screen here, but up in the top left corner, really the top, you're going to see Helicobacter pylori, and you're going to see 5.3 e to the 3. Normal is 1 e to the 3. Don't necessarily worry about the whole whatever with the numbers, but what you can see is it's red. Red means high. High means there is an active infection. Now, another thing that's really important is if you show up at a high level H. pylori infection, remember, H. pylori starts in the stomach. It has to make its way the whole way through the rest of your digestive tract and out the exit before you can culture out a stool sample. So this person right here has a very, very high level H. pylori infection because it's massively strong even out the exit. This is going to take some time to repair, okay? But this is what this looks like on our stool test, on this GI map that we run. That's why we run this test, really, is because it gives us a lot of really great information. But since I've been running this, the amount of H. pylori infections that has popped up has been mind-blowing. It truly, truly has. And that is such a great place to start with a lot of people because people with H. pylori have usually been suffering with this for a long period of time, and they've usually passed it around the household too. So we got to work on treating these guys as well. You're also seeing the different virulence factors on that as well. So each one of those corresponds to a different set of disease groups that you can have in the body, okay? So coming back over to my normal side, all right? So basically, what is this going to do? So H. pylori is going to cause us to have a whole host of problems. It's going to cause us to be fatigued. I promise you it's going to screw up your hormones because you're not going to have proper digestion. Your microbiome is going to be off, which is going to stress out your adrenal glands even more. You're just in this whirlwind of, oh my gosh, And why is this so important to me? Why did I choose to go over this instead of going more in depth with phase 2 and phase 3 of adrenals? Why? Because it's in our family, okay? It sucks. I'll be honest with you. I had H. pylori, right? I hadn't had it in the past, but somehow I got H. pylori. I would imagine chronic stress. I have an office. It's stressful, okay? I take a lot of the weight of other people's health conditions. I put it on my shoulders, and it kind of beats me up a little bit. It takes a lot out of me. So that chronic stress response is going to cause my stomach acid to deplete. It's going to go lower. And something that I have noticed is that I can digest food so much better now. My appetite is so much better now. And I'm actually able to put more muscle mass on, which is always great. So what happened with me is I had H. pylori, all right? Our little boy Hoyt, he's been having some digestive issues. I'm like, what the heck is going on? He hit 2. I'm like, you know what? We're going to grab a stool sample on him real quick. And sure enough, he had H. pylori. Okay, his was a little bit lower level. It didn't pop up on the high mark, but still, you want to make sure you catch this stuff because a lot of kids get this when they're young, and if it goes undiagnosed, you're really, really, really going to have a lot of harm done to that kid. Because remember, vitamin A is going to go down. Vitamin C is going to go down. You can have a kid that's anemic, all right? They're not digesting food, so they're going to lead to food sensitivities. They're going to have rashes. They're going to have irritable bellies. They're going to have loose stool. And really, yes, it's a nightmare for the kid because the kid doesn't know what's wrong, but it's going to be a nightmare for you too because H. pylori is not a normal test that medical doctors and GI specialists run. Just not. I have not seen a single doctor send over a test result that had H. pylori on it. I have no idea why. It's incredibly common. I think the stats over 50% of the world has H. pylori infection. So why would we not want to run this and find this out? Just makes sense. So before you start doing a stomach building protocol, if you will, like the apple cider vinegar or throwing betaine HCl in there or something else that's going to try to spike your stomach acid up, make sure you get yourself tested for H. pylori, right? It is massively important to do so. And one more side note before I wrap up today. Another thing that I've been seeing a link with is that high H. pylori concentration. You've heard me talk about this next one a million times. I'll let you write it in the box. If we have high H. pylori concentration, we already talked about stress and psychological stress. What other type of toxin, environmental toxin, do you think I see a lot of the times with H. pylori? So what environmental toxin likes to pop up with H. pylori? Likes to hang out, I guess, with H. pylori. Anybody want to write it down? Let's see here. I'll just throw it out here. Mold. Mycotoxins. So I've been seeing a lot of correlation with H. pylori and mycotoxins being in the body. That is a bad recipe for disaster. Because that means we have to clean up the house, detox the body, get the mold out, get the H. pylori out, and it's going to be a nice process. The good news is you found something wrong. The other good news is you have a lot of room for improvement. So that was just another little fun fact that I figured I'd throw out there, just a tip that I see all the time. Okay? So that being said, the reason I went over this today is because I'm seeing this all too often, especially in this current state of stress that we're in with everybody worrying about COVID or what's happening in schools, and everyone's minds are completely blown and worried about a disease that has like a 99.9% cure rate of just natural defenses, which is, I won't go off on a tangent. I can't believe that people are still so scared of this thing. We're focused on that instead of being focused on actually making our bodies healthy. So we're focused on trying not to be sick instead of making our bodies healthy so that if we do hit that COVID or we do get some COVID, it's just going to go right through our bodies. It's not going to have any problems. This H. pylori, mold toxins, mycotoxins, gut infections, chronic stress, that is going to kill you much quicker than COVID ever will. Because think of that. All right, top 2 killers in the United States are heart disease and cancer. Where do a lot of those causes come from? The gut. If we don't fix the gut, I don't give a darn what medication you're on. It's not going to save your life. All that's going to do is give you a permission slip to allow you to keep living the lifestyle that got you sick to begin with. It's going to be like a blindfold, like, no, I'm good, I'm totally good. And then all of a sudden, boom, it happens. It's not because I'm being insensitive. It's because I'm being 100% honest with you. And as Americans, we need to change the way that we're thinking. If we keep going and being reactive to our health, we will continue to be the sickest country in the world. Okay, the third leading cause in the United States is medical errors. You really want to believe our medical system when they give us advice? I mean, seriously, this is just getting a little bit absurd. So the only doctor that you need to come in contact with is yourself. You need to empower yourself how to eat, what lifestyle you have to live, what tests you have to run. Yeah, insurance doesn't like to pay for you to be healthy. Sorry, it doesn't. It likes to pay for vaccines that don't need to be introduced to be introduced. So start taking care of your health now. And how do you do that? How do you build the proper blueprint for that? Get tested now. Figure out what might be wrong, whether you have a symptom or not. That way you have predictability of health into the future. So next time one of these stupid ass pandemics come through the world, you're sitting pretty like, all right, cool. I wouldn't even know we had it if, CNN and all those guys weren't just telling me that, a million cases are popping out, but death rate's super low. That's another just side note tangent. You guys realize that the higher the infection rate for COVID is, the lower the percentage of death becomes. I want you guys to understand that. More people become infected, test positive. Still, even if it's the same amount of people who are dying, you're going to divide the top number by the bottom number, and your percentage is going to continue to get lower and lower and lower, because this thing is not killing people unless they're really on their deathbed or they're being misdiagnosed when they do die with COVID because they get a kickback on that. I'm just going to end on that tangent because I'll just speak all day long. But anyways, put health back into your hands. Start doing what you need to get better. Don't just go researching random things and like, oh, this herb sounds good for the stomach, and this one sounds good for the stomach, and this one sounds good for the stomach. Make sure that you have something, because if you are at risk, you need to know how severe the infection is, so that way you know how long the treatment needs to be. And that's where you reach out to somebody like myself who's trained to deal with this stuff. We have the herbs. We have the ability to do that. You can't necessarily treat this thing with antibiotics. The antibiotic cure rate for H. pylori is terrible. It's terrible. Not only that, but when you have H. pylori, you're going to pass more infections on to the digestive tract. Okay? You can have staph infection, strep infection, all these other infections, yeast, parasites, all that happening down here. If we're crushing H. pylori with antibiotics, what's that doing to our probiotics? Lower, 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 lower. So that means those infections, those secondary infections that we have are going to get stronger. And if we do come in contact with any other infection, it's going to make it even worse. Okay? So we can't rely on antibiotics in these cases. We need to make sure we're doing lifestyle changes, herbal changes, and do it, and do not mess around with it, because H. pylori is nothing to mess around with. So on that note, if you don't know, if you've had it in the past, if you're curious if you still have it, or you still don't even know what the heck H. pylori is, you didn't even pay attention to this whole video, let me know, okay? Because I'd love to be able to get this information out there to you, because this can change the life of you, but also your entire family. Because if you test positive for H. pylori, I'd say there's about an 80 to 85% chance that the rest of the family is going to have it too. So why not find out now? Change your life, change your family's life, and again, it's all about predictability of health into the future. So you are no longer walking in fear, you're walking in faith. And I'll end on that. So thank everyone for tuning in this morning. Next week, I don't know what the topic's going to be. Maybe I will do a little bit more in phase 2, phase 3. I will let you know as the week goes on. All right? Take care. Have an awesome weekend, everyone.